Welcome, everybody. Welcome, welcome. Insta folks, welcome. You're over there tonight, and Facebook's over here tonight. This is my friend Rachel. Yay.
Welcome me.
Welcome me.
I am so welcome.
Here we are. We did it. We are last one, 11th out of 11. And I wanted to sort of recreate the very first moment that Rachel and I played all of these songs live. And so something that I did when I wrote the Gather record, the record that we did last week, was I used these big pieces of white paper and wrote all the lyrics out just to kind of get a sense of everything that was going on all in one kind of site. And so I thought it would be fun to throw them up. You can't see them all through the virtuals, but the folks that are gathered here can. So read along with whatever you feel like reading along with. But the first time Rachel and I played through this, we had a kind of I guess it was like a trial group, if you would call it that, where we just played through and kind of read the scripture and shared thoughts from my friend Yako's book, and it was really sweet. So we're not going to do that tonight. We're going to kind of talk a little bit. I'm going to read some things, just like we've done for the last 10 of these things. 10. How about, can you imagine? We made 11.
Wow.
11. We started August 20th, and here we are. We're almost through it. Before we get rolling, though, just because it's customary and tradition,
Yes.
I'm going to just throw this out here again. And I've got 13 of these left in my attic, and I want them to go away tonight. So I want it to go away tonight. Yeah, isn't that awesome? 1996. So if you order anything off my website, christopherw.com/shop, I will give you maybe 3 of these. Because I want them to all go
Man
service. I know,
station.
somebody should have told me that was not a good title.
So my mind is being blown. I don't even know what to say about that.
Yeah. I know, it's terrible.
Is that who you are?
I am. That's what I was in my 20s, apparently.
So what?
No, it was written about a gas station attendant.
Oh, that's awesome.
And yeah.
Okay, so there's a song.
There's that, and there's that.
a song called One Man Service Station.
And this is the last one. I'm going to take a little break, and then we're going to come back on November 19th, Thursday, Throwback Thursday, November 19th. It's going to be an all request. And I haven't quite decided if you have to put your request in ahead of time. We'll probably put your request in ahead of time, and then we'll do some sort of fly by the seat of our pants. You can throw something out, and I'll try to play it. And that includes this album for all of you out there, including my mom. Babs, this is for you. You can request anything you want off of this album from 1994 when I was 24. And it has a very poetic picture in the back of me pensively looking over the Columbia River Gorge with my walking stick that I still have that I don't use anymore, and a very creative photoshopped image there on the front of a road driving to mountains, done by my friend Mike Nennis. So this is fair game, November 19th, and tonight we're playing this record, which I'm super excited about. There it is. Thank you for framing that, and I'll talk a little bit about it as we go. And it was written, if you don't know the story, it was written to accompany this book by my friend Yako Hamann. And he is a dear friend who lives just over the hill here in Nashville, Vanderbilt professor and great author and speaker and pastor, and he's just the dude. And so he wrote this book called The Millennial Narrative. There's actually a cool study guide as well if you want to dive into this book with your friends or church or family or whatever, but it's awesome. So that's sort of the inspiration for why I wrote the record. And tonight's evening is sponsored by this cocktail right here. As we've done every week, we've had festive cocktails, and this one we are calling The Locust. If you know the album, you know why it's called The Locust. But the actual name is called Baltimore's
Dark Serum.
Baltimore's, I always say that wrong, Dark Serum. Or as my friend Janie calls it, it's a yak tail after my friend Yako Hammond. And or we're just gonna call it the locust. It's really, really tasty. Cheers to that.
Jen is asking to turn the volume up on the Facebooks.
On the Facebooks, it looks pretty loud to me. Yeah, no, that's something separate. Once we get going, I bet I'll try to turn it up a little bit. There we go. So here we go, number 11 of 11. Thanks for coming along on the journey with me for this time, and I should say also thank you to my family. My son's not here because he's watching a movie with our friends' kids. What movie did they land on?
Still looking. Yeah, still deciding.
They're going to be deciding for a lot. That's why I walked out of that room. I made suggestions and none of them were welcomed. So Nacho Libre was not on the list for tonight. 4 children trying to choose a movie is going to be awesome. I bet they're just going to watch previews for the next hour and a half. But I want to say thank you to my family. My wife, of course, as always. Thank you, Suze. And our housemate, Janie, as well, who's had to put up with my behaviors the day of shows. And my attitude and all that.
What attitude?
Well, no attitude. And the funny thing is that along with this live stream thing that we committed to, much like that, was the Psalm 91 thing that we did for 91. Well, we did it for 81 days, but I didn't really fully understand what I was committing to. I just sort of committed to it and then realized, wow, this is a lot to do and a lot to put my family through. So thank you, family, for walking through that with me over the last bunch of months. But all right, you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. I'm gonna read a little bit first, though.
Okay.
My dear friend Yako and I had talked about this project for over a year, but I had put off writing any of the songs because I was in the midst of still traveling for the album Gather and also totally intimidated by what was laid out before me. I had been given each chapter of Yako's book as it was being written, and I had spent time with the short book of Joel off and on throughout the year, but to be perfectly honest, it was hard for me to pull out meaning, and I needed Yako to help guide me through the depths of Joel's subject matter. And thankfully, his writing is just as good as his teaching, and it accomplished just that. In our conversations, he extended an enormous amount of freedom, but he also gave me some tall guardrails to help guide me in the process of writing. I found these to be very helpful as it narrowed my focus, yet also really challenging as the vision became incredibly narrow in some ways. As I sat down to write, or to begin to write, I invited my friends into the process and came armed to every writing session with the Joel text we were focusing on, as well as 2 pages of notes from Yako's book to help guide the theme and direction for each song. And what happened with many of the songs was like a surprise or a gift that we got to unwrap as we chased after the heart of each of the 2 songs for each chapter, ultimately trying to follow and craft a musical journey that fit the narrative of the story we were reading. My friend Rachel and I gathered to write in her kitchen that first morning, and I brought a guitar part that had surfaced the week before as I was reading Joel, and we both agreed the music captured the spirit of what we were reading and proceeded to write what we thought would be song number 1. But after a week of letting the song breathe, realized it needed to become the second song on We Will Remember. We dove headfirst into the first half of Joel and culled through the amazingly descriptive imagery that Joel uses to describe the devastation of the plagues of locusts.
Oh, here we go.
Cheers. Every time we say locust, we have to have a drink. That's great. Dark serum. We felt like our job was to just mine all of the lyrical beauty out of the text. It was not hard to capture the heart of it, and it moved us both to land on a simple chorus of utter helplessness. All throughout Joel chapter 1, the text repeatedly calls us to wail, grieve, mourn, call out, despair, cry, and Rachel and I knew that this was what needed to be repeated in the chorus. As we wrestle with the gap that loss creates between the way it is and the way it should be in our hearts and minds. We yearn for a dominant other to bridge the gap and bring us hope. And so crying out in lament is what is called for. For as Yako describes when we cry out, it is not God coming close to us because he has already been close. and he's always close, but rather us reaching out to God and ultimately placing us in a greater narrative than we could on our own. After sitting with Cry Out for a while and being moved by what we had written, which is always a good thing as a songwriter, we began to rethink this as the first song as we thought about the flow of an entire album of songs. One of the hardest parts about writing this project was that I knew we needed to write songs in order to help build the narrative, and starting in the complete utter desperation we had just created would be really hard for any listener to engage out of the gate. You're excited about this, aren't you? The first verse paints a pretty dire picture. The leaves have dried up, the earth is aching, there's no water for the roots, the ground is grieving, no food for taking, and I'm withering too. Yes, I am withering too is a pretty rough place to start. And much like a good novel or a Sunday morning service, there needed to be an introduction or a call to worship, as liturgical churches call it, a welcome to the story that is about to unfold with the understanding that you have a place here. So Rachel and I returned to Joel to give us guidance on where to start this journey, and there in chapter 1 we found exactly what we needed. Joel had written a call to worship for us, but we had skipped right over it to dive into the devastation. And isn't that how we live sometimes? We first see the bad or the difficult, and sometimes we focus on that while missing the urge to community that Joel calls us to. We had missed his call right from the very beginning of the book. Joel comforts us as with words of utter importance that we are not alone, and that for the love of our children and those who will come after us, we must dive into our loss so that there will be comfort moving forward. Now that is a much better beginning, and a beginning that is both worthy and much easier to step into. And as Jaco writes, it is not a question of if the locusts will come. I like this. We might. It is merely a question of when. So the chorus needed to be intimate, inviting, engaging the listener to step into the story that is a story we are all a part of, regardless of where you find yourself exactly. A chorus that doesn't soften loss, but helps keep it in its place, and is something that we can and are meant to learn from and, in essence, embrace. While backstage at one of our favorite festivals, Soul Fest in New Hampshire, I had an amazing conversation with a friend named Frank, who, after listening to me play Hear This, gave me this pearl of wisdom. He said, when we are in the valley, we often fight so hard to get out of the valley as fast as possible that we miss what God has for us to learn in that place. We wanted to capture that idea. We are called to receive what sorrow gives and ultimately receive what God has for us in that difficult space. Wisdom comes in the bottom of the valley, so wait for it and know that many have gone before you to that dark and difficult place. We wrestled Hear This the most out of any of the songs that we wrote for the project. As the first song, it had to achieve so many different things and hold so many qualities that would encourage, challenge, engage the listener. The melody and the music changed 3 times for the verses. The chorus went back and forth twice and didn't land solidly until a couple weeks before we went into the studio. Yep.
Maybe we're just indecisive.
We could have been indecisive. And I'm grateful for Rachel for hanging in there with me and fighting for what she believed to be true about this song as well. It was a beautiful beginning to the project. And many thanks again to Frank for that wisdom that challenged me greatly as I hiked up the mountain in New Hampshire that afternoon, and that continues to affect me even more as I play these songs out live. So let's begin with Hear This. Hear this, all who live, come heavy, come helpless, receive what sorrow gives. Hear this, all who live, come gather together, the story is ours. All we see is devastation like never before. For the love of generations, we must tell them how we mourn. Hear this, all who live, come heavy, come helpless, receive what sorrow gives. Hear this, all who live, come gather together, the story is ours. Over mountains they're descending on numberless wings. darkness, we are defenseless. The locusts leave us suffering. It is all who live, come heavy, come helpless, receive what sorrow gives. Hear this, all who live, come gather together. The story is ours. Before them a garden sweet like Eden, behind them a dry desert waste. The locusts will cut sound like fire, the earth shakes, so wake up and wail, for nothing escapes. Hear this, all who live, come heavy, come helpless, receive what sorrow gives. Hear this, all who live, come gather together. Hear this, all who live, come heavy, come helpless, receive what sorrow gives. Hear this, all who live, come gather together. The story is ours. Thanks. Excellent.
Thank you, Rollin. Because they're gonna stay on forever now. Need to see.
I should say too that I sort of hinted at this in that sort of introduction, but regardless of what faith background you come from, the story that is in the Old Testament book of Joel is just a great story. So my hope is that you would just stay in the story, especially as we were practicing this today. We were both struck by some of the lyrics that popped out like, oh man, this takes on a whole new meaning for where we are right now in the midst of a pandemic that everyone is feeling. So hang with us through the 12 songs, even if you don't have a faith in the God of the Bible. There is nothing I can do but cry out to you. The strongest fire is only measured by what it takes away. Feels like a lion showing no mercy. Lost comes as quiet as a thief. Help my eyes to see. There is nothing. There is nothing I can do but cry out. For this is how it is, and not how it should be. Why have you left me here in the between? Beneath the starless sky, this river has run dry. tears that I
can't seem to cry. There is nothing, there is nothing, there is nothing I can do.
There is nothing, there is nothing, there is nothing I can do but cry out to you.
Cry out to you.
We cry out to you. We cry out.
I was just so happy that we wrote that. It was like, people need permission.
Yes, agreed.
I needed permission.
Yeah, it very much felt. It was like the song, the last song on my When I Was Everything record, that the music already told everything. Like the music said everything that I felt, and I was just trying to figure out how to give lyrical meaning to it. And agreed. Why do we need permission?
I don't know.
Is it the you've seen The Social Dilemma, so you can tell
We're
me.
gonna get to. Oh yes, I've seen it.
Yes. Do they talk about the need that everything has to look good? Yeah. Exactly. Perfect. Yes. I swear, I think that has a lot to do with it. Of like, we can't post on social media if something's hard, because then we're sort of looking for sympathy, but we actually probably really are looking for some empathy. Jaco and his wife Michelle are from the lovely country of South Africa, and they taught me this word that the word is Ubuntu, which basically means I am because you are. And the way Desmond Tutu explains it is sort of, they sort of describe people as having Ubuntu, which means they have the ability to invite others in, and that means not just for hardship, but also for celebration, graciousness, and I loved that word, and just the heart of that, and again, especially in this season that we find ourselves in, we're all wrestling with different things, but it's affecting everyone, and just affecting everyone in different ways. There's a beauty that Joel speaks to of crying out and lamenting together. That's found in this song. I am because you are, because you are. There are no words, you speak for me. When my eyes grow tired, you help me see. When it feels like I've lost everything, fire that breathes. I forsake the crown and fall trembling with no place to hide. Forced a refugee. It is you, my God, who defines me. Because you are, I am. Thanks. Focused.
Oh. I was just thinking about how hard it is to find that in community.
Which part?
When you, what's the first line? You just threw it on the floor.
I did. When there is no.
Just kidding. When I have no words, you speak for me.
Yeah.
That's not. That's a good friend.
That is a good friend. It's a good God, too. I think our tendency sometimes is to want to speak too soon, too. And not sit on each other's mourning benches without having the words. Sometimes that's all that is needed, and then helping give the words when the words can't be found. With my friend Rob, I should say that all these songs were written with other people. Rachel had a hand in 5 or 6 of them, and there were some that were sort of finished. We didn't finish it, so I brought it to someone else, and they helped finish it, and it was sort of a collaborative. The whole thing was incredibly collaborative, which felt like the right way to go because I didn't have a lot of words. After just writing and releasing the Gather album, which is all about community and gathering together. And then I was supposed to write another record about the same thing, and that was really challenging. So it was a joy to bring in others to help with that. And some fun stories came out of that. If you actually want to read more about sort of the songwriting process for the album, you can go to my website, and then I think it's I don't remember what it is actually, but if you go and click on the album, you can find some I think it's actually the We Will Remember. There's a tab called We Will Remember. If you click on that, there's actually notes about each chapter, because I released the album in chapters before the whole thing came out. So to honor sort of the flow of the book, Jaco had 6 chapters, and so I released 6 2-song EPs, and then wrote notes about each of those songs to kind of accompany so that you could follow along. But if you want to read more about the process, it's a fun read. And the first thing that I read tonight was from chapter 1. But I brought in some friends, and great stories kind of happened along the way. And this I wrote with my friend Rob, and he hadn't written a lot of songs recently, and so it was a joy to kind of bring him into the process. And we were sitting at my kitchen table and thinking, sort of thinking about this sort of eerily apocalyptic moment of what would it look like if the neighborhood of Creve Hall, where our house is, if we got hit by 4 plagues of locusts, like what would that look like? And so we sat there and we were sitting around the table and thinking, okay, what would we do first, like after the plague left? And we just sort of imagined ourselves kind of stumbling out into the street and going and knocking on neighbors' doors and making sure that everybody was okay. And that led us to the first line of this song, which comes from Jaco's book, and the line is "burdened by our isolation," which again is incredibly applicable to where we find ourselves today.
How could it be?
How could it be? Burdened by our isolation, one by one we come to find we're barely breathing, holding on to life. Stop and listen, hear the whisper, rest and wait for love to guide. To walk forward, we must look behind. I cannot know you, I cannot know all of you, I cannot know you, oh God, by myself. I cannot know I cannot know all of you, I cannot know you, oh God, by myself. So come and help me set the table, God, prepare this holy ground. To our desolation we are bound. When we gather in God's presence, living out love's mystery, cannot know you, oh God, by myself. I cannot know you. I cannot know all of you. I cannot know you, oh God, by myself. Good life comes in our belonging, and crying out with those who mourn. Love draws us together to be restored. I cannot know you. I cannot know all of you. I cannot know you, oh God, by myself. I cannot know you. I cannot know all of you. I cannot know you, oh God, by myself. I cannot know you. I cannot know all of you. I cannot know you, oh God, by myself. That's one of my favorites, I think. If you look at the paper up there, it's funny because we had, in our desolation, hope is found. And one of the parameters that Jaco set up pretty early on was he said, no hope. You can't have any hope till like song 5, and that was song 4. So we crossed it out and wrote, to our desolation, we are bound, which some days, especially now, feels like that. Ooh, excellent camera work, love. That's good. Excellent. One of the things I also thought about in that song was we're huge fans of Young Life in this house, ministry and youth ministry, and such big fans that my wife works for them, and I do a lot of work with them as well. And one of the things that they do at Young Life Camp, which is this amazing experience we can talk about another time, is that they will often have this, what do they call it? The long table. The long table. They call it the long table because that's what it is. And it's a very appropriate name. And they spread out, they get tables, and all 500 kids will sit around one table pre-COVID to eat a meal. And I long for those days when that will happen again. It's a beautiful picture of community coming together. And when Rob and I were writing that song, we kind of envisioned that we would kind of go and knock door to door and make sure all our neighbors are safe and sound, and then we would kind of put this table right down Timber Hill Drive, and we would all gather and pull together what food we had and eat together. And Jaco says it is in this place, not the place of lost. Come and help me set the table. God prepared this holy ground. To our desolation we are bound. When we gather in God's presence, living out love's mystery, here we find our true identity. And Jaco says, because it is in this place, not the place of lost, that we find our true identity. We need one another to remind us whose we are, and that, as Jaco writes, that the locusts do not define us, Rachel. The locusts do not define us. There is great beauty when we come alongside those who grieve. not to necessarily offer words or comfort, but to just be with them. And I love this. Gathering is an act of pastoral and prophetic protest in the face of tragedy. Gathering supersedes the place we gather, as God's covenant is with his people, not the place. Gathering instills identity when identity has been eroded by crisis. Gathering awakens our attention of and to the compassionate God. Gathering where we can remember and proclaim together. Gathering to find hope in belonging. See why it was so fun to make a record after I had just made a record called Gather. How are we gonna gather? I love it. All right, here we go.
Do you remember the valley you walked through? Heaven and earth gathered to bring you home, to bring you home. The mountains reached down to rivers that fed you, both from my hand, to show you are not alone. You are not alone. Remember and proclaim. Remember. Do you remember how I first loved you, called you by name, holding you in my arms? I held you in my arms. Now even more, come hungry and mourning, return to me, come ready to rend your heart.
Thank you. We have this thing at our church that I've always wanted to write a song with those words, because we say that every first Sunday of the month when we're gathering. Yeah, because we would do communion, and that was always before we would come. Kind of prepare for the table. Coming to the communion table that's what we're doing by coming to the table. We're remembering His goodness and His faithfulness, and then proclaiming that goodness and faithfulness. One of my favorite stories from this record was that wrestling moment I had with that Remember and Proclaim song. And Rob and I, my friend Rob, we came up with a great first verse, and we had the chorus, and it felt great. But it was just sort of like, it felt great here, but it didn't feel great with all of what was already going on. And so he gave me permission to wrestle it by myself, because we came up with the melody and that first verse, and I was like, I just think we can do better than that. And a lot of this album was wrestling it to the ground. I feel like I'm trying to find the right heart of each song.
And that takes time.
What's that?
It takes time.
Yeah, it does take time. Unfortunately, I didn't have a lot of time, but we made it work. And this song, the last song in particular, was a fun wrestling match, because we had that first part, and then we sort of got rid of it, and I wrestled for an entire Saturday, thanks to my family giving me the grace to do that. And I got the first verse we sort of reworked, and I was like, okay, that's right, we're headed in the right direction on that. And then my wife went to bed before me, and I was wrestling, and I just couldn't get it. And so I went to bed, and she let me sleep in the next morning, which is very gracious of her. And I remember very, very clearly, I had this crazy dream that shot me up out of bed. And the dream was that she came into our bedroom with our son, and he was an infant, teeny infant, and she laid him down next to me, and I woke up. It was so vivid, like she was there, everything. It was one of those bizarre dream moments, and I laid back down, and I thought to myself, okay, what was I supposed to learn? What are you trying to show me in that? And the idea that I was remembering and proclaiming, but I was remembering only to a certain point, and I had to go back a little bit further, like a whole lot further, to when I was a child, when I was a baby. And I stumbled out in my underwear and grabbed my computer, and Hudson, our son, was like, "Hey, Dad, what's going on?" He started talking, and I was like, "No, not yet." And stumbled back to our bedroom and finished the song. And thanks again to my family for having to put up with this. I see, so I should talk into and I should enunciate. My mom, Babs, would be so glad, because I don't enunciate enough.
That's what my mother says.
Really? Come
Yes.
on. Locust it up. What's
Oh my
up?
God.
To our mothers.
Even
Locust.
better, yes.
That was not, I didn't mean that our mothers were locusts.
This is not dark, I have to say. This
No,
is
but it's
I
very
don't have
tasty.
yes, very tasty.
Maybe because the picture has a skull on it, etched into the box as opposed to our monogram.
Yes, it doesn't have our monogram glasses, thanks to our wedding day, doesn't really have the skull effect.
Or the dry ice floating around it, or the smoke machine, or whatever she put in the picture.
You can do that next time.
Yeah, I'll get a smoke machine for the next time.
But this is the last one. maybe for the
No, this is just for the two of you some other night.
oh, smoke machines. We have our own personal smoke machine.
Yeah.
That would be a great album title name. Personal smoke machine.
I don't know if anything can beat the title of this One Man
Come on.
Service Station.
Somebody should have told me that was a bad title.
Where were you?
She was not around. She was in high school. She was in high school.
She was in high school.
So bad.
Did your mother tell you to enunciate that?
Babs,
Wait.
it's your turn. Chime in. Did you tell me to enunciate One Man Service Station better? Is Mom on
Of course she's here.
there? She chiming in at all?
She's excited about the cover. And that you told her she could request anything she wanted.
I knew she would be. Because I know what song she's going to request. Has she already requested it? You can start putting your requests in now. Oh, whistling on the water. Whistling on the water. Oh, breathe. Oh, I got you. Okay. Okay, enough of that. Enough banter. This I wrote this song with my friend Janie, who's sitting here right now. Come on, Janie Lynn Townsend.
That was fun.
It was fun. I'm not going to read anything about that. I'm just going to play it. I will say this. That one of the things that Jaco does in his book is he equates, as does Joel, the landscape, because the people that he was writing about in Joel, not Jaco, but the author of Joel, there was an agricultural people, and so the land was really, really important. So when the 4 plagues of locusts came in, they wiped out everything in the land, and so the land was pretty rough around the edges, dry and arid, and so Jaco was talking about how the land represents sort of the shame that we carry and sort of the arid dryness, the desert of our hearts and our souls. Just a little explanation. I've never seen the earth turn this dry and weary, and these cracks beneath my feet resemble my heart. My thirst for rain is a burden that I cannot carry, and this ritual of shame tears my world apart. And I am not alone. You are the desert, you are the storm. I am not alone. You are the promise you will restore. And I am not alone. Moments and moments I live, hoping to be known. These days from where I stand move painfully slow, a lot like the days of COVID. You got a time, know the cry of all your children.
the promise you will restore. I am not
There's a great story about how this song was written. If you want to go find it after I wrote it with my friend Chad Cates on the piano right over there. And as he was wrestling with some things in his story, and we tried to write this song. Took probably 7 or 8 different stabs at it, and never really felt right. And until we went down and ate some salads, and he explained to me that I'm telling the story right now. I said I wasn't going to, but I feel like I have to. He told me that, he's not eating meat, and I said, oh, well, how come you're not eating meat? And he said, well, because I got diagnosed with colon cancer, and I'm sort of in recovery from that. And I was like, bro, that's an important thing. I didn't know that. I'm sorry that I didn't know that. And so we had this great conversation about it, and sort of bonded over the fact that that I lost my father to colon cancer. And so we just, we had sort of a moment of sharing about that, and trying to wrestle the fact of, like, what happens when things like that happen? Like, how do you wrestle that with the fact that that is really hard, and it came upon you. My dad was very young when he died, and Chad is very young to have colon cancer, and so it was a sweet conversation, and all of a sudden, after we ate our salads, we came up here, and the song that we couldn't wrestle to the ground came out like that after we had that moment of connection about something, and made or shared transparently with each other about the hardships in our life. So.
Dry bones, Lord, please pour your spirit out. Let me now be satisfied. Lord, pour your spirit out. Lord, please pour your spirit out. All I need is you. And all I need is you. As we sing and praise your name, Lord, pour your spirit out. Help us breathe your blessing in. Lord, pour your spirit out. Lord, please pour your spirit out. All we need is you. All we need is you. And all we need is you. That's the answer.
That's the answer, right there. I love when we were practicing today. Our hearts ache to find a home in this chaos and upheaval.
Yes.
Little did we know where we would be.
Well.
Yes.
Which one? Oh gosh, wrong. Let's see. You ache
Yeah.
while we try to make this world our home. It's not. It's just temporary.
Temporary. Yes. We were laughing about how this record feels very prophetic for where we are now, but we wrote it a while back.
2 years.
2 years ago. Yeah.
But as we were practicing today,
Thank you.
I said, it just makes me feel better about everything.
Yeah. Singing these songs.
It makes me feel better.
Yep.
It's like it's no secret.
Agreed.
It's happened before.
What do I do when I do what I want? What do I want when I want what I want? Help me see that the way that I'm living don't hurt just me, yeah, I'm hurting you too, hurting you too. Where do I turn when my heart gets lonely? And I'm afraid no one's coming for me. Ain't got no friends, cause I sold them for silver. I keep on blaming everybody but me, everybody but me. Radio mercy, I am thirsty. Radio mercy, I need to drink from a deeper well. In those days when you're fixing what's broken, and when you gather your people to you, oh, will I stand with my sisters and brothers, or go it alone the way that I do, the way that I do? Radio mercy, I am thirsty. Radio mercy, I need to drink from a deeper well, flowing from the highest mountain to the valley floor below. May your judgments and your mercy lead me where I need to go. Like this valley flow into me, let every dry place in me grow. May my life, Lord, be a blessing, fill me up to overflow, to overflow. Radio mercy, I am thirsty. Radio mercy, I need to drink from a deeper. Radio mercy, One of the gifts of this time of writing, I kind of came down to the wire, and but I conveniently was out in California, and I reached out to a dear friend of ours, Justin McRoberts. And if you don't know Justin, he's crazy good, everything, author, speaker, just artist in general. And he's a self-proclaimed short man, and really, really funny. And one of the things that, if you have been watching these live streams back after the Sweet Redemption record came out, I didn't really do any traveling, and the first round of shows that I did was with Justin, and he lost his dad as well, and it was sort of a divine, providential thing of my first experience back on the road, playing shows and trying to put my feet underneath me and find the words that I was trying to find, was with him, and he's been a dear friend and a gift in my life for a long time. He's also the one that taught me, what's the name of that song? Patty Griffin song, that When It Don't Come Easy, which I put on the second live record. And when I reached out to him, I don't think I told him the gravity of the situation, that I had only 2.5 weeks to complete 4+ songs. But I had a good sense that knowing his work ethic and the depth of our friendship, we could be pretty productive, even though we had never actually written any songs together. As I did with all my co-writer friends, I brought all the notes, themes, and scripture, but with Justin, I also played him every single song I had written up to that point to help give him the full scope of the musical journey, as well as hear his suggestions on the missing pieces. The Bridge to a Deeper Well was one of those. Mm-hmm. One thing Justin is gifted at is writing simple, catchy, soulful hooks, and he did just that as we hammered out bridges for Remember and Proclaim, Dwelling Place, and Deeper Well. And he offered other suggestions for the earlier songs that still needed a little tightening up. That would have been enough of a gift, but what came next was even more of a gift, because 2 new songs and a lot of laughs in under 24 hours. Chapter 5 in Yaakov's book is entitled Be Accountable, A Just God and the Promise of Political Restoration. And in conjunction with Joel, it calls us to live with a responsibility before God and with care towards our neighbor. It challenges as well as awakens a hope within the people who have been exiled through the devastation of the locust, and calls us to focus on practicing accountability, transparency, non-defensiveness, responsiveness instead of reactivity, and the somewhat difficult theme of practicing paradox. Mm-hmm. Interestingly enough, these character traits were incredibly similar to the ones my friend Justin had already shown to me in our long friendship, which I don't really think I was fully aware of until I started diving deeper and writing this particular chapter note. And when we sat down to write together, he was transparent, responsive to the Spirit, and helped me drive to be accountable to the story I was in the midst of telling and living firsthand. When I moved to Nashville in 2004, as many of you have heard me talk about over the years, I came in search of finding authentic community that was committed to living life together. My wife and I found that community through the church we were a part of and the neighborhood we chose to buy a home in. We were invited into a small group of folks who became our family and who we met with for over 12 years. And unfortunately, about a year or so ago, it's when I wrote this, through a lot of hard conversations and tears, that group came to a place and a decision to part ways and stop meeting regularly. It was incredibly painful for all involved, but probably the right decision with the changes that had happened in various families and the directions we were all going. So after several months, the men of that group showed a desire to start meeting again every other week to share our lives, laugh a lot, cry and pray together. And while that has been beautiful, it has also been hard, as we've had to navigate our individual understanding of what both the ending and the new beginning has meant for our friendships and what expectations come along with that. Without going into more detail, what grew out of these conversations over late summer was this question: how could we come into these times together holding our hopes and desires, yet still calling each other to a higher obedience, accountability, and faithfulness? And what resulted from these conversations was this understanding that we have no ability to individually offer anything worthwhile to one another unless we are drawing wisdom and strength from a deeper well, which in our case is walking actively with our God. If we are not in tune with God's compassion and mercy for our own lives and stories, we will not be able to have compassion and mercy for one another, and therefore be unable to extend holy wisdom to one another. As Yaakov writes, to practice accountability means to take responsibility for one's action, have emotional maturity and internal backbone, and not shifting blame to external focusts, i.e. the locusts. And transparency will complement accountability by making the invisible visible. After we cranked out Deeper Well that afternoon, I went to bed pretty satisfied with our progress and would have been happy heading home with all that we did, but we awoke in the morning and had just a couple hours before I had to jump on a plane to get after another song. Several months before this project, while I was walking my sweet dog, Cody. Is that my mom? Oh. Sweet Cody. I had this lyric and melody come to me that I never did anything with, and thankfully it resurfaced in my preparation for this album. The lyric was inspired by a Capernaum Young Life staff person named Vince, who lives in the Bay Area, and when I played a concert for him and his friends with disabilities, he told me a story about leaving a corporate job. He offered up a prayer to God that basically said, "Break my heart for what breaks yours." And God responded with a word about disabilities, which caused Vince to faithfully leave his job to do ministry full-time. He felt an overwhelming need to minister to our friends with special needs, and so that's what he did. I've always wanted to write a song with that lyric, and upon reading Yaakov's words about practicing paradox, I was reminded of those words, especially in light of thinking about the way that Jesus lived a life of caring for the marginalized and vulnerable, the strangers and the broken. He was able to hold the complexity of people's experience and the often opposing reality. And as Yaakov describes, much the same way we are called in faith to believe in an omnipotent God who loves people as well as the locusts that come to devour landscape and lives. A God so full of mercy, yet also the same God who holds us accountable with loving judgment. Yaakov explains the literal meaning of the word politics as the shape of the city. And he continues to unpack it like this. We are either partaking in creating relationships and places for people and the earth to thrive and flourish, or we are destroying relationships and places and the gifts we find in others. That's a hard definition for the shape we find ourselves in if you truly take it to heart with our current political climate across the board. It feels like we've lost our collective sense of empathy, and that we're not helping shape a city that awakens hope but more destroys the gift of others by not embracing the stories of loss and hardship as we just continue to create more noise to cover up those voices who have already been quieted. I want to be a person who helps shape the city by creating an awakening hope, not one who destroys the gifts of others. I want to be one who responds and not just reacts. I want to take responsibility for my actions. I want to help call my community to transparency through being transparent myself. But I know, as the bridge of Send Me restates, those famous words from the old hymn, "Come Thou Fount," I am prone to wander, and I need to have my heart retuned by God's mercy and compassion, so I may sing that song of hope and justice. Then and only then will I be moved and sent into action. Break my heart and fold what breaks yours. May I be moved like you. Renew my mind and heal these eyes to see my world the way you do. Break my heart and fold what breaks yours. All who I left alone, your sons enslaved by wealth and power, your daughters stolen, traded and sold. Send me to the refugees and strangers. Send me to the powerless and poor. Send me in the strength of your command.
action, oh Lord. Break my heart for what breaks yours. Chase out my fear with love. Teach me the song of hope and justice. Let it be upon the earth as in heaven up above. Send me to the refugees and strangers. Send me to the powerless and poor. Send me in the strength of your compassion. Move me into action, Lord. Oh, to grace I'm great a debt I am constrained to be. Let thy goodness like a fetter bind my heart to thee. Oh, prone to wander, Lord, I feel it, to leave the one I love. Here's my heart, oh, take and seal it, for thy courts of love. Send me to the refugees and strangers. Send me to the powerless and poor. Send me in the strength of your compassion. Move me into action, oh Lord. Send me to the refugees and strangers. Send me to the powerless and poor. Send me in the strength of your compassion. Move me into action, oh Lord. Teach me the song of hope and justice. Let it be upon the earth as in heaven up above. This is one of my favorite songs to play from this album, and after I was with Justin in California, I went to Idaho to work on some writing, and it was coming down to the wire, about 2 weeks left. And I did this crazy thing where I drove from McCall, Idaho, all the way to Portland, Oregon. It was just about 500 miles to play one show. And then I drove all the way back the next day and flew out of Boise, Idaho. And little did I know I did know, but little did I know that I'd be writing a song about the river. And if you've ever done that drive from McCall, it goes down, you probably haven't, anyway, you go from McCall down to 84, and then 84 goes up, and eastern Oregon, most people think of Oregon and all of the Northwest as just this lush rainforest, wet all the time, gray, sad place. But eastern Washington and eastern Oregon are full of desert, and so I started in the desert, and as I made my way west, I hit the Columbia River and the River Gorge, and I wrote this song driving along the river, and it's called The River. You came to me when I was a stranger, wayward soul, so lost and afraid. 'Cause you knew every hurt I had and where I wandered. You catch every tear, hear every word I pray. I pray. You're taking bread and fed the 5,000. You healed one man faith of the few. Every blind broken soul you offer a home, 'cause no one is a stranger to you.
Well, thanks for coming along on the journey. This is it. This is the last song, number 11 out of 11. This is it. The last song. And I've posted about this a lot, but this album is sort of the perfect way to end it, almost like it was supposed to happen. Because the entire last 2.5, 3 months, since August 20th, actually before that when I started posting about it, has all been filled with just going back and remembering songs and looking at silly pictures and reading journal entries and remembering people that I had forgotten and stories and going to Tulsa and running the crazy ejection seat, all these crazy stories that my life has been full of. And the one thing that has stood out pretty much every single week of the last 11 weeks is just God's faithfulness throughout my life. And so it is fitting to end the 11 weeks with this song, which speaks to all of that. That river that is flowing and stepping into that river. The community that I have been given, the gifts of talented friends, the gift of a good family, and just God's faithfulness through it all. So I hope that you have gleaned something from this journey, because I certainly have. And I'm going to take a little break for a couple weeks, and then we'll be back, whatever date that was. I said November 19th. I think it stuck to my shoe. Maybe that's really funny. That sticker that was there. November 19th, I'll be back. And if you have enjoyed the journey, I would love it if you would, as I think Babs, my mom says, put a little jangle in the jar. I think that's what she used to say. She said, "Have people been putting a little jangle in the jar?" And I said, she doesn't sound like that. I don't know what. She doesn't sound like that at all. Little jangle in the jar. No,
What's her real name?
Barbara. Barbara Williams. But
Babs,
she,
I like that.
Babs McDougal is her nickname. You know where it
So
came from?
McDougal is not part of anything. It's
No,
just
it has
something-
nothing to do with
Okay.
anything.
That's
When
like a character in a book.
We play competitive Foursquare in our family, and there we have a saying. Everybody here knows it, that there is no family in Foursquare. So we play very competitively, and early on we play in the beach. We play in our driveway, but in the beach is where it started. We go to the Jersey Shore every summer, and we play on the beach. And a bunch of years ago, my older brother made a Foursquare film, and the star of the film was our younger brother Matthew, who you may have seen a couple weeks ago for the covers night in Vermont. The handsome one with the quality voice. And he starred in the film, and his body greaser, was Babs McDougal. So that's where it started. He started calling her Babs McDougal, and she was his body greaser for,
I don't even know what a body greaser is.
you just it lubes you up,
Okay,
like
okay.
sunscreen or whatever oil, to make you more slick.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. That's where it started.
The one who applies the lotion.
Exactly. Exactly. Yes. And my dad was, I think, trainer. I think he was the trainer. Anyway, all that to say, if you've enjoyed it, I'm not traveling right now, and I'm not making any money. So if you want to order CDs, you'll get that cassette or T-shirts. I still have a few T-shirts. One Man Service Station. 13 to go. I got to sell 13 orders tonight, so I can get rid of them because I don't want them anymore. Well, I'm going to give this one to my friend Dusty and Claire, so we'll have 12 left because they're here present right now. ChristopherW.com/shop. What's that?
I'm just going to joke about it.
One Man Service Station. Stop. But yeah, if you've enjoyed it, please Venmo, PayPal. I'm not desperate, but I would love your support in the midst of this craziness of not being able to travel, not being able to do what I love to do in front of large amounts of people, but 7 of us tonight. And it appears that we're not not going anywhere anytime soon. I could be wrong. But let's end with this song, which is all about promise and faithfulness. Good?
Yeah, I'm good.
Would you give it up for Rachel? Come on.
This is my first FaceTime live.
This is your first, really?
FaceTime?
No.
Facebook.
Facebook. It's called
See?
Facebook.
FaceTime.
And you should listen to,
fantasy.
go find her music, Rachel Taylor. She has some amazing albums. She's actually working on something right now I can't tell you about because I'll get in trouble.
Yes, you will.
Very talented, though. In that day, the mountains will drip new wine. In that day, your fountain will flow from high, and the land will be restored, and the generations will live their voice. We are here to declare your goodness, mercy, and love. Your promise, you will not leave us, you will not let us go. We are here to retell the story of living hope and glory, praise to the Father, Spirit, and the Son. We will remember, we will remember, we will remember the goodness of you, God. We will remember, we will remember, we will remember the goodness of you, God. We are here to declare your goodness, mercy, and love. Your promise, you will not leave us, you will not let us go. We are here to retell the story of living hope and glory, praise to the Father, the Spirit, and the Son. We will remember, we will remember, we will remember the goodness of you, God. We will remember, we will remember, we will remember the goodness of you, God. We will remember, we will remember, we will remember the goodness of you, God. We will remember, we will remember, we will remember the goodness of you, God. Amen.
Locust.
Look. Thanks for being here. Appreciate you following along on the journey. Be kind to one another.